With Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 18, Konohamaru has learned the lesson that Ice Cube taught people back in the 1990s. Don't trust the big button to smile, and sadly Konohamaru has learned that lesson the hard way. All that blushing that Matsuri is doing was merely her preparing to ruin this man's whole life by using Moegi's feelings for Konohamaru to make him gradually lower his guard so that she can eat him. He's not the only one in this chapter who gets taught the basics of what they learned in the Ninja Academy. Multiple characters are taught the hard way to remember why a ninja must see through deception. However, let's back things up and let's unpack the chapter itself. We open up the chapter with Sumire walking into Amado's lab with quite the scene unfolding right before her. Kawaki has Amado jacked up against the wall, and before she can get too far into scolding him, Kawaki basically tells her to shut up because he hasn't lost his temper yet, but he could always do so depending on how things play out with Amado. What we're seeing here through this entire exchange is the fact that Kawaki, despite him saying that he doesn't care about Amado, forcibly making him into a cyborg and replacing his naturally born human parts with ninja tech, we see that he is still, based on his actions, that he does care, and his reaction right now is completely in character for Kawaki. He is someone who associates power with control, and this entire conversation, particularly the early parts of it, it really showcases that. He was powerless back when Amado used to experiment on him, and he was powerless when he got Ishiki's coma seal placed onto him both times. The fact that he's now saying that when his body is modified is up to him, it's basically him saying that he's taking back control. That is something that survivors are taught from various different types of assault. They're told that in therapy to focus on taking back control and to not allow what happened in the past to dictate their future. And that's basically what we have here. It's subtle, but it's enough for us as the audience to be reminded that for everything Kawaki's been through, he is still a victim. But like victims in the real world, he's taking back control. But Kawaki, in this case, he is spiraling out of control as he does so. He tells Amado to remove his limiters on his body so that he can use 100% of Ishiki's power, and that if he doesn't, he'll kill him on the spot. That, my friends, is the first mistake that Kawaki's made, making a threat like that to Amado when he still needs him. It is a sign to Amado and to Sumire that while Kawaki can make a calculated decision to visit Amado, he's not thinking logically in that moment. How can you get your limiters removed when the only person who can remove them is dead because you killed them? All that blustering that Kawaki's doing, it's enough for Amado to pull the trigger by activating the shutdown code verbally. And he puts Kawaki to sleep just as he did Delta in part 1 of the story. This leads to Sumire calling out Amado for having a shutdown code on Kawaki, which is pretty huge news because it means that Class Rep and the others, they were not made aware of this during the time skip. Shikamaru spent the last 3 years believing that Boruto was the killer of Naruto, and the boy who Amado told him that he had implanted a shutdown code on. But Shikamaru never voiced that information when Konoha was hunting down Boruto, likely because only Amado could trigger it, and he was not going to allow Amado out of Konoha. But that also means that at no point during all of her conversations with Ada did Ada ever reveal the shutdown code to Class Rep either, which means that Amado just played his strongest hand here. He has no more elements of surprise to use, which means the next time Kawaki gets confrontational with Amado, he's going to know about that shutdown code. While Kawaki's body is being moved by Amado and Sumire, back in the land of Wind, on the outskirts of the Hidden Sand Village, we have Sarada and Mitsuki trying to dispel Ryu's concerns about Yodo, who is unable to hide her emotions at the sight of Ryu. Sarada tries to tell Ryu that Yodo is only behaving in that way due to her personality, yet we see Sarada mentally worried about Yodo, and that's the narrative showing us that there's another truth that comes with dealing with these awakened shinju, which is that the people that are tasked with taking them down are going to struggle as well, because it's basically them having to take down a loved one. It's different from, say, Edo Tensei, where the person looks exactly like they did when they were alive, even keeping their personality. The only real changes are the black eyes that they get and the cracks on the face. Whereas these awakened Shinju, they look different, enough so that even Sarada couldn't tell that Hidari was made out of Sasuke's chakra. But Yodo is proof that once someone knows the identity of the awakened Shinju, the human emotions, they kick in. We see this more with Matsuri as she's talking to Konohamaru, who is awkwardly carrying out his mission to rizz up Matsuri, and at this moment, he's nothing more than a moth flying into a flame. He knows that he shouldn't go any closer to it, but he just can't help himself. When Matsuri starts speaking of how comfortable she is when she's around Konohamaru, how it makes her realize who she is in so many words to paraphrase, she calls Konohamaru Konohamaru-chan, and that's what does it for our boy Konohamaru. He's basically melting now. So he gets this flashback of where he and Moegi were children and adults, and thinking back to the times that Moegi called him Konohamaru-chan, and the emotions are just kicking into gear for him. It's very subtle by Ikimoto, but this was a great way of showing how Konohamaru has begun to subconsciously associate Matsuri with Moegi, even though in his mind, he knows that Matsuri is an enemy, a predator meant to kill him, but the flashback shows some of the more wavering of his heart, even if it's only for a moment. But as we see all too often in the Naruto world, it only takes a moment to take down even the most powerful of shinobi. Insert Madoru Uchiha for those of you guys who forget. While Konohamaru is trying to get his head back in the game, we have Ryu taking things into his own hands and spreading out the iron sand across the battlefield in an attempt to locate Boruto, but it ends up giving us more information about the iron sand that was not previously disclosed in the Naruto manga or in Boruto's manga. But apparently, the iron sand gives the user the ability to sense locations and bloodlust of people as well, which is how Ryu immediately goes from looking for Boruto's location to calling out Yodo on her bloodlust, and after Yodo makes a weak attempt at downplaying how she's feeling by writing it off as, hey bruh, this is just my normal behavior, Mitsuki tries to divert the attention away from Ryu, focusing on Yodo, and he tries to strike up a conversation, and is smart to do so. What we're seeing here are the genes of Orochimaru at play. As a clone of Orochimaru, we expect Mitsuki to be intelligent, but what he did here is super underrated in that he was able to naturally shift the topic of conversation away from being centered on Ryu scoping out Yodo's bloodlust to refocusing Ryu's attention back to Boruto. It's a sign that at the very least, Mitsuki was someone who has remembered the key element of what it means to be a shinobi, which is deception at all costs, and he's trying to cover up the weaknesses that Yodo has displayed and her emotions getting in the way here. In short, it's teamwork. Ryu reveals that while he doesn't know for certain why he was ordered to kill Boruto, he just knows, hey, Jura told me he's got to go, and he thinks it's because Boruto knows too much about the Thorn Soul Bowl, as well as other things that he should not be privy to, which is why Jura said Boruto's got to get snuffed out. This leads to Sarada attempting to use Mitsuki's previous conversation with Ryu to lay her own trap for Ryu. The logic behind it is solid. It's basically her saying that, hey, Boruto's somebody that we're all trying to track down, so we should be working together. So she basically says, hey, if Boruto's after the Thorn Soul Bulb, then isn't there a way that we could use a Thorn Soul Bulb in order to lure him out of hiding, while also pretending like she doesn't know what the Thorn Soul Bulb truly is? It's a dangerous gamble, and you can see that the two Konoha shinobi, they're trying to follow their orders, which are to trick the awakened Shinju before betraying them. But through the small things like sensing Yodo's bloodlust and the over-eagerness to use the Thorn Soul Bulb and the emphasis on working together that Yodo, Sarada, and Mitsuki respectively in those examples have each tipped their hands to varying degrees, and Ryu's taking notice of. Meanwhile, back in Amado's lab, Sleeping Beauty, better known as Kawaki, is finally waking up. And as expected, Kawaki, he's not in a good mood, with Amado immediately trying to talk him down. What Amado's doing here is pretty crafty when you think about it, which goes back to what Ada said about him in Boruto Part 1, when Amado found himself at odds with Code. Amado has the silver tongue of a politician, but this time his words, they don't pan out as quickly as he would have hoped for them to do so. Amado quickly tries to establish a common ground to lower the temperature by saying Kawaki's right to view the awakened Shinju as being a threat to everyone, a threat that none of them ever saw coming. He even concedes that the only way to be able to fight them might be for Amado to give Kawaki what he's asking for, the full unleashed power of Ishiki that's inside of Kawaki. But there's a catch, as is often the case with Amado. Nothing ever truly that he does is for free. He's basically Doctor Strange coming to visit Dormammu from the first Doctor Strange movie, where he said, Dormammu, I'm coming to bargain. That's basically Amado and Kawaki here. What Amado wants in return for Kawaki is to place his coma seal on the new clone of his daughter Akebi. That basically goes back to Boruto Naruto Next Generation's chapter 75, where Amado revealed that he had a daughter who he tried to unsuccessfully clone, and thus he secretly implanted Kawaki a coma seal that contained the genetic data of his daughter. It's his final option, which I want to clear up a couple of big misconceptions. So people ask, why doesn't Amado just Edo Tensei his daughter? Edo Tensei requires a living sacrifice in order to be used, and his daughter would still be dead. That defeats the purpose of what he's trying to do. He wants her back to life in a living, breathing body. People also ask, why doesn't he have Orochimaru just clone his daughter? Orochimaru would not be able to change things because Orochimaru, for all of his genius, he's run into a similar issue. Mitsuki and his brother Log, they are both clones of Orochimaru. The smaller Shin clones that Orochimaru made, they are clones of the bigger Shin Uchiha. They don't have the same personalities. They're all different because each clone has its own soul. Every clone that Amado made, it looked like his daughter, it had her voice, and even had her memories, but all of them had the terrible personality of Delta, which Ada tells us in the manga is the exact opposite of Amado's daughter. This brings us back into the story itself. Amado is desperate, and he tells Kawaki that the resurrection of his daughter is the only thing that he truly has to live for at this point. He wants a guarantee that Kawaki will go through with planting the coma seal on his daughter first, and then he'll remove the limiters. However, the problem is that even after 3 years have passed since Kawaki was first propositioned this by Amado, the same thing is still happening. Kawaki's hate for Amado, it will not allow him to feel pity for someone like Amado, and he basically tells him to cut the sob story short because he's the one who's making the demands. He's the one in control. He counters Amado by making it known that he wants to make it perfectly clear that if he plants a coma seal onto Amado's daughter and she becomes an Otsutsuki, that Kawaki, he will kill her. And this is the story dropping another breadcrumb for something later occurring that goes wrong with the revival of Amado's daughter, because this is the second time that Kawaki's raised this concern of the coma seal making Amado's daughter into an Otsutsuki, which, given the number of times this has happened, this feels like a massive Chekhov's gun waiting to go off, which that term Chekhov's gun originates from the Russian writer named Anton Chekhov, who believed if you introduce something into a story, a gun sitting on a nightstand, for example, by the end of the story, it has to have been used in some way or else it serves no purpose. This is our second time of hearing Amado's daughter might become an Otsutsuki via the coma seal. So the smart money is that you start that countdown timer on Akebi being an Otsutsuki, you start that timer now. Amado hears this and he pushes back even harder for Kawaki to place the coma seal onto his daughter, basically saying, hey, I am willing to take that chance. And for the first time this entire encounter, Kawaki, he pauses and he makes a wise and a rational choice. Amado is too desperate. Someone like Amado, who's played 5D chess against Ishiki for years to set up a plan to kill Jigen, then kill Ishiki, and then trick Naruto and Shikamaru, also he can get to the point of using Kawaki to revive his daughter. The only time Amado has truly showed signs of becoming unraveled is with his daughter Akebi, and Kawaki knows that he has leverage here to do what it is that he wants, but also that Amado's blind spot to his daughter is either intentional, which that doesn't end well for anyone if someone like Amado is a villain, or it's something that Amado has overlooked, because this is the one area where Amado cannot be logical and he's only being emotional. Kawaki basically says in a very non-polite way that Amado can take all those long lists of conditions he has, he can shine them up real nice, he can turn them sideways, and he can shove them up his candy ass for all he cares, because he isn't reviving anyone who could be a potential enemy without being in possession of Ishiki's full power. Which translates into roughly, before I revive your daughter, I want to make sure I have enough power to kill her if it ever comes to that. And based on his history with Amado, Kawaki is justified to not really trust anything Amado's saying fully. Amado then tries to flip it back on to Kawaki by saying that he shouldn't be focused on getting Ishiki's full power, because in so many ways he already has Ishiki's power. He has Ishiki's full defensive capabilities, and the ninja tech in Kawaki's body, it gives him extreme regen abilities. He's as close to immortal as someone could ever hope to be. So what good would it be getting Ishiki's full attack power? The only thing that Kawaki's truly missing. It's very subtle, but he's trying to backdoor gaslight Kawaki into feeling bad about wanting Ishiki's full power, when Kawaki already has so much power at his disposal, and he lays it on even thicker by saying that if he releases the full attack power of Ishiki, he has no way of even knowing if it will be enough for Kawaki to survive that battle with Jura, which means if Kawaki dies, Amado won't be able to revive his daughter. My friends, this is Amado Sanzu basically being in the running for #1 gaslighter, and I love how Kawaki sees this and basically gives 0 F's about it. He tells Amado that living or dying is irrelevant to him. The only thing that he wants is to ensure that Naruto has a safe world to return to when he unseals him. He's willing to become an unstoppable monster if that can happen. Also, he can kill all the Claw Grimes, the awakened Shinju, kill Jura, kill Code, and then kill Boruto, since Boruto has Momoshiki inside of him. Kawaki says that once that is all done, he'll revive Amado's daughter, which is his way of saying, after I've taken out all the threats that I deem to be a threat to Naruto, I'll give your daughter this coma seal, and if she does end up becoming Otsutsuki, I'll have all the time in the world that I need to deal with her as my sole focus. The tension here, it is thick enough to cut, and I love it, because this is going to get messy as this entire arc is continuing to build on the themes of love and the various types of love that exist. Kawaki is a representation of obsessive and misunderstood love with Naruto that is driving Kawaki mad. Boruto is the love for one's loved ones. Hashinkoji is the love for one's sense of purpose, i.e. being a singularity of fate. Jura is the love of evolution and knowledge. Hidari represents the love of a father by having Sasuke's chakra. Matsuri is the love of a lover by having Moegi's chakra. Ryu is the love of a son by having Shinki's chakra. Mamushi having the love that comes from forced obsession with Ada. Sumire and Sarada in that Boruto love triangle, that's self-explanatory. Amado's love for his daughter, it borders on obsessive, just like Kawaki's love for Naruto is obsessive, and we're seeing in real time the story build on each of these concepts, but work it into the narrative into an organic way, which is leading to a very messy outcome for several of these characters, representative of our own lives as humans, where nothing truly ever goes according to plan. There are always variables that we do not account for. We then shift back to the Land of Wind, and Konohamaru tells Matsuri to not call him Konohamaru-chan because that's reserved for somebody else, which leads to Matsuri asking if it was Moegi who is allowed to call him that, and Matsuri's whole vibe shifts from this moment, and we see it in how she's acting towards Konohamaru, and she's not the only one who suddenly shifts. Ryu flips Sarada's suggestion on its head by showing off the Thorn Soul bulb, and this immediately gives him the confirmation about the intentions of the shinobi in the area. Araya and Yodo, they see the Thorn Soul bulb, and they cannot contain themselves in a way that does not give themselves over to Ryu by exposing themselves, and that's when Ryu knows for certain he's been played, and he reveals, hey, I already caught on to your plan a while back from now, which goes back to the intro. A ninja must see through deception, and ironically, Ryu saw through the deception that the shinobi are trying to use. Yodo is unable to move, and Mitsuki is shocked that Ryu was pretending to be naive when he knew the entire time what it was they're trying to do. And Ryu takes a step further by using his iron sand to take control of the bodies of those around him. And this is something that builds on what we've been told about Shinki in the manga before. Shinki was not just trained by Gaara, but he was also trained by Kankuro, a puppet master. In the drafts that Kishimoto made for the Boruto movie, Shinki was both an iron sand user as well as a puppet master, mixing both of those in simultaneously, and that's basically been carried over here, building on the very brief use of Puppet Master and Iron Sand combo that we saw in the manga version of the versus Momoshiki arc, where Shinki fought against Metal Lee in the second exam, and he was using a Iron Sand puppet. This leads us to the benefit of Araya being on the battlefield, who also happens to be a puppet master, and we see why Kashin Koji wanted him on this team with Team 7. Araya is able to counter Ryu's attack by using the jutsu that he had meant to use in conjunction with Shinki, and we end this chapter off with the continuation of the battle being set up for the next chapter. One thing that I do love about this chapter is that it's a slow marching drum for future plot points. Not everything has to be super action focused. While we were focused on the setup for the battle in the Sand Village, we're also seeing Kawaki reveal how far he's willing to go into the darkness to get the things that he wants, which is Ishiki's full power, and he all but admits that he is aware he's becoming another Ishiki, but he doesn't view himself in the same light because his intentions are for Naruto's well-being, which ironically goes against the very things that Naruto as a character stood for. Kawaki idolized Naruto, yet his actions in the chapter prove that he doesn't truly understand Naruto Uzumaki, but we also get this setup for a darker turn with Amado's daughter being revealed as an Otsutsuki, but it was buried in this chapter in a way where it wants you to ignore it so that it comes across as a shock later when it either goes a wrong way where she doesn't become an Otsutsuki, which would subvert expectations because it ends up being something even worse than that, or it will end up feeling like a gut punch when she is revealed to be an Otsutsuki, and everyone reading the chapter at home does the finger pointing meme like that guy sitting on the couch faster than you can click here to watch this video from my Anime Explained channel where I discuss non-Naruto content, or you can click here to watch the Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter reviews to catch up on any chapters that you've missed.